Welcome into another edition of the DFS Report. It is Wednesday, January the 8th. Thank you guys for tuning in. We had a pretty good night last night, Zach. One of my better nights of the season. Um, Definitely found some of the really nice spots last night. Definitely missed on a couple spots. But the defenseman's where we really made hay last night. I had a boatload of Thomas Harley. I had a lot of Mackenzie Weegar as well, and those two absolutely smashed. Zach Werenski also had a lot of him, and boy, we kind of talked about it, that the Blue Jackets not the best road team. Zach Werenski's home road splits not ideal, and that kind of came to life last night again. So something to keep in mind moving forward with the Columbus Blue Jackets. It looked like, oh, yep, they're going to nuke another slate. They scored, a minute 10, full line goal, a minute 10 into the game. Sean Monahan getting hurt midway through the game also didn't help much, but yeah, it looked like, oh, here comes another nuke, and then it never kind of really materialized. But before we dive into today's show, this was supposed to be a 4-game slate. It is now a 3-game slate because the Los Angeles Calgary Flames game has been postponed due to the wildfires in Los Angeles. We just wanted to extend our thoughts to all those being affected by the wildfires in Los Angeles at the moment. Absolutely insane scenes posted on the internet today. So all the best if you are in California. Stay safe out there. And now we have a little bit less to talk about today. So we will dive into these games in a little bit more detail than we normally do. Zach, all 6 goalies are confirmed. We got that out of the way here. Logan Thompson versus Kevin Lankinen as the Capitals host the Canucks. You got Peter Mrazek versus Trent Miner making his first career start against the Blackhawks, and then Karel Vejmelka versus Sergei Bobrovsky in the late game. Those are your starting goalies. We'll start at the top with the Washington Capitals and the Vancouver Canucks. You've got the Capitals 3.4 implied total, minus 180 home favorites against the Canucks, who have a 2.5 implied total. We were off the Canucks the other day. Didn't look like JT Miller was all that interested. Suddenly, he looked a lot more interested. Are you staying away from them tonight, or because it's a 3-game slate, you're just going to try to have a little bit of exposure across the board and then hammer the spots you really like?
Yeah, I think I'll have a little exposure across the board here. Obviously, coming off of a pretty strong performance there the other night for this top line. Jonathan Lekermacki getting the bump up there. Hasn't really played a whole ton this season, but he's a guy who loves to fire the puck. So getting some shot volume up there, I think, is a good thing, considering both Miller and Besser haven't really been shooting the pill a whole lot here lately. The matchups are obviously not the greatest here. For this top line, they're going to see 39% of their ice time going up against the Washington 2 line and 31% going up against Washington 4. And both of those lines have been pretty solid defensively. So I think I've got some interest in Vancouver 1 here tonight. I'm doing the 5 lineups thing again here. So, I'll probably mix them in to one of those lineups here tonight just to get a little bit of exposure, see if they can stay hot. But, if you take a look at the line stats too, those goal for numbers have really dropped off pretty quickly here for Vancouver 1. With Lekermacki sliding up. When it was Jake DeBrusk up there, I think it was 5.1 goals for per hour or something like that.
Yeah, so, something like that.
Yeah, so it takes a drop off. There's not a ton of shot volume there. So, they're going to need to find a way to score here. And we'll see if JT Miller can stay hot here and continue to try and boost his trade value. Because clearly the Canucks do not want Mika Zibanejad in return for JT Miller, according to some reports yesterday. So I don't mind the spot here. I mean, they're seeing very, very little ownership here on a fairly small slate. 6.2% ownership coming in on Vancouver 1, 7.2% on Vancouver 2. DeBrusk sliding down there to that second line, maybe gives a little bit of a bump there to a guy like Connor Garland, who still continues to just have a fairly solid floor, all things considering here. And thanks to some shot volume, finds a way to get on the score sheet as well. So I think the ownership's pretty right here on this Vancouver side of things. I've got some interest, but not really a whole lot.
Want to know something insane about Vancouver 2 with Jake DeBrusk? Put them together last game in 7 minutes and 39 seconds together. They amassed a whopping 0 shot attempts, outshot 13-0. The actual shots on goal were 5-0, but the shot attempts were 13-0. Didn't get a single puck on net. Got out. Obviously, scoring chances were 0 as well. Gave up 8 scoring chances to 0. Not ideal, but if that continues tonight, that looks pretty good for, the fourth line of the Capitals, maybe a little bit of the second line, maybe a little bit of the top line as well. Matchup-wise for the Capitals, the top line's got the better of the 2 matchups. The second line, as you mentioned, you're going to see a lot of that JT Miller line. It is worth mentioning Right as Jim drops in the chat. Elias Pettersson is a game time decision. I didn't include him in the charts, but I imagine if he plays, he will probably slide in here for Suter, and then that'll probably just knock everybody kind of down a peg. Is what I would imagine. Or Suter will just go down to the fourth line. That's what I would guess would happen, but not 100% sold he plays tonight. But if he does, just keep an eye out for that. You might be able to get him at a little bit lower ownership this evening. He's not in the charts, but Elias Pettersson is $6,200 tonight. It doesn't really matter to me that much because, yeah, like I'm not building a ton of lineups tonight. It's a pretty gross slate. I'm probably going to avoid the Canucks pretty heavily because I do have quite a bit of interest in Logan Thompson between the pipes. $7,800 feels like a really nice price for one of the better goalies in the league, playing pretty well. In a pretty good matchup. That being said, he's also the highest projected owned goalie on the slate. The other night, we were talking about the difference between Washington 2 and Washington 1. Washington 1 still feels like the line that might have a little bit of a higher ceiling. Washington 2 is the line that grades out better yet again and is much, much cheaper. They're seeing both these lines seeing a healthy amount of ownership tonight. Dubois has been red hot. He's up to 21.4% tonight. Tom Wilson's been on fire. Almost got you a Hattie the other night. He's at 19%. Protoss just 13.5%. He's still only $4,000. Then you got the second line. Ovechkin at $8,200, 21%. Strom 15.5% at $5,900. And Taylor Radish, everyone's basically just leaving him off. So yeah, Washington 1 didn't really work out the other night, but this looks like they look like they're in a slightly better spot tonight. They're going to see a lot more of the bottom six of the Vancouver Canucks, which grade out much worse defensively than the top six. So, I think that a lot of people are just going to auto click on Washington 2 because they're a lot cheaper. They pair better with Colorado 1, which is just the heaviest chalk we've seen like basically all season. So I do think that Washington 1's a decent pivot spot. They're a little bit lower owned probably. And the matchup's a little bit better. So if you're trying to get, Washington exposure tonight, I do think that the smarter route might be going Washington 1. That being said, if you were planning on playing Colorado 1 and Washington in some capacity, you're probably going to just be pigeonholed into having to play Washington 2 solely for the value, unless you go with a real stars and scrubs style build. So yeah, the fact that Colorado 1 is outrageously expensive is just going to make Washington 2's ownership come up because they look like one of the best value lines on the entire slate. How are you planning on attacking the Capitals?
Yeah, I do agree with you. Like, I think I got a little bit more interested in Washington 2 than Washington 1. But in the same breath, like, I don't mind going with a stars and scrubs build. And I think that there's some options out there for doing something like that here tonight. We'll talk about Utah 3 looking like they have a very good matchup here tonight, even if they're not the most productive. I'll probably go that route and try and build a Colorado 1 and Washington 1 line, just as a way to try and get myself different from the field here on this slate, because I don't think a lot of people are really into the idea of going with those stars and scrubs. But, here at the DFS report, we love to find our value plays. We love to find our cheap defensemen. And I think there's some guys that really fit the bill for that kind of a lineup here tonight. So I'll be risking it. I'll be taking a shot on it for sure. But, as you mentioned too, like Washington 2, they've been just on fire here as of late. Tom Wilson's red hot right now. Almost got me the Hattie, like you said. 1.9 goals per hour over his last 20 games. Going up against 1.5 individual expected goals. He's generating a lot of high quality scoring chances. A little bit of an uptick in his shot volume here as of late too, climbing up to 7.5 shots on goal per hour of ice time. So I don't mind that whatsoever. And Pierre-Luc Dubois, his price is starting to climb at a crawl's pace here, but he's up to that 4K mark now. I think he's a pretty interesting play here on this slate tonight too. Just racking up the assists, setting up guys here left, right, and center. 2.6 apples per hour over his last 20 games. Interestingly enough, loves to play against the Vancouver Canucks. 6 goals, 21 points in 23 career games going up against him. So I don't mind getting here a little heavy on this Washington top 6 and what looks like a pretty solid spot for them.
Yeah, worth noting that they also basically just dominated the time on ice the other night as well. You had Tom Wilson at 22 minutes. You had Pierre-Luc Dubois up over 20 minutes. You had Alexei Protas at exactly 20 minutes. Meanwhile, Dylan Strome, 18:10 was the highest on Washington 1. Ovechkin just 16:42. So that definitely is a line that's kind of being leaned on a lot heavier. That's why they grade out a little bit better. They're projected for 29% of the ice time. What about Washington 3? The metrics aren't terrible. The matchup's also not too bad. It's actually the best on the Washington side of things. They're going to see a lot of Vancouver 3, which is by far their worst defensive line. Connor McMichael was red hot earlier in the season. He's obviously cooled off a lot. They don't necessarily grade it out well, but at 10,300, very little ownership. If you're trying to get different and get exposure to Washington, I don't mind a dart throw here on Lars Eller, Connor McMichael, Ivan Mironishchenko. Might not be the worst dart throw. The matchup's okay. The underlying metrics are fine. The other night, against who did they play the other night? The Sabres. That line had 9 shot attempts and just 7 minutes of time on ice. They were generated a couple scoring chances as well. So they weren't terrible the other night. They might be a decent pivot option at super, super low ownership and a way to get kind of some interesting exposure to the Capitals tonight. And then, believe it or not, the fourth line actually grades out slightly better than them. So you got to just kind of embrace the weird tonight. I don't like the fourth line matchup quite as much. I'll probably lean towards Washington 3, but the fourth line does present, fairly reasonable floors as well. Brandon Duhaime, Nick Dowd, Andrew Mangiapane, 8,300. It's a greasy, grimy slate when we're out here talking about the third and fourth lines here. But yeah, I don't mind necessarily getting to this Washington bottom 6 because I think it's a good team to have exposure to tonight. And I think it's pretty simple to just look at it and be like, I want to build around Colorado 1 and Washington 2, where, if it's a low scoring night, Washington 4 somehow gets a couple goals, they play a bunch. You never know what could happen tonight. In terms of the power play in this game, the Capitals do have the number 1 power play advantage on the night as well. 5th best power play. By far and away the best power play over the last 10 in tonight's slate. They do face a fairly good Vancouver PK, but still the number 1 power play advantage on the night. So to me, that brings the same kind of guys into play as the other night. I really, really like Jacob Chychrun the other night. He's just one of 3 defensemen, that have double-digit goals this season. John Carlson's had a really good year as well. Both of them certainly in my player pool tonight as well. So, maybe Washington 2 grades out a little bit better, but I think Washington 1 closes the gap a little bit in terms of how much I like them just based on the power play matchup tonight. Any final thoughts on Washington, Vancouver before we move along?
Yeah, I don't mind the idea of getting down to a little Washington 3 here tonight. Connor McMichael and Ivan Mironishchenko, both of them generating 1.2 individual expected goals per hour over their last 20. Granted, Mironishchenko just plays 9 minutes of ice time, 9 minutes of ice time per game, so he's not really seeing the ice a whole ton out there, but generating some looks when he's getting some chances. I think Vancouver 3 also, opens up as a potential pivot spot too. Really low owned punt play. Kiefer Sherwood is continuing to find ways to score goals here. 1.2 goals per hour over his last 20 games, and a fairly solid floor, all things considering. 7.9 shots on goal per hour as well. So don't mind the idea of mixing him and Teddy Bluger into a lineup or something like that. Bluger's had some success going up against the Caps. Obviously, a lot of that time spent with the Pittsburgh Penguins organization. 1 goal and 7 points in 18 games. So if they find a way on the score sheet, that really can open some things up for you.
Yeah, I didn't really talk about the Canucks too much as I don't have a ton of interest, but I do like Lekkermacki quite a bit tonight, $2,600. I do think he's quite a good value, and I was a little bit surprised that his ownership was kind of under 10% because he looks like one of the better value plays on a slate that doesn't have a lot of really great looking value options. Okay, game number 2, the Blackhawks and the Avs. The Avs are minus 229 road favorites, 3.9 implied total, 2.6 implied total for the Blackhawks. So, as we know, as is the drill here on DFO DFS Report, when Chicago's at home, they match up the Jason Dickinson line against the opposition's best. So far this year, they haven't been quite as good as they were last year, and really it hasn't been all that close. They're still limiting the opposition to 24 scoring chances against per 60, which is solid, but the goaltending just hasn't been there for the Blackhawks. And then I also looked up the 2 games in which the Avs played in Chicago last year. They hard matched, obviously, against the McKinnon line in both of those games. The one game they did a fairly reasonable job slowing down the McKinnon line, not great, just slowed them down a touch. The other game, the McKinnon line just ran wild. So this isn't really a matchup that worries me all that much. Peter Mrazek's really not played all that well. This Avs team looks like they're in a really good spot tonight, obviously. You're going to have to find ways to get different building around Colorado, but they're overwhelmingly the best line on the slate. They project the best in terms of 5v5 score. They have the highest power play score. The raw projections are just obsessed with them. infinitely better than anybody else. So yeah, they're the number one line to play tonight without question, and just trying to find a way to get different and build the best possible lineup, including them, is probably the route to go tonight. They're in just such a good spot. The power play continues to struggle. It's been a huge issue for them, but they still grade out fourth best tonight. Obviously this looks like a game environment in which, things could get pretty good for both sides. I don't necessarily trust the Blackhawks offense. Trent Miner making his NHL debut, I think, is definitely perking up the Blackhawks ownership. That and the fact that they're just outrageously cheap. But like Trent Miner, very good AHL numbers, looked okay. I think he stopped 12 of 13 shots in his NHL debut in a relief effort against the Capitals. So he's not somebody that makes me like super nervous about fading the Blackhawks tonight. They're just not doing a whole lot. Tyler Bertuzzi has been red hot, but he's shooting literally like 50%. It's just not something that's sustainable or going to continue moving forward. The second line, the Taylor Hall line, that's going to be going up against McKinnon. They're probably going to get caved all night. The fourth line projects fairly well, but I'm not playing the fourth line of the Blackhawks. Like, I just have a hard time finding an avenue in which I'm like, yeah, I want to play the Blackhawks. And I think a lot of people will see Trent Miner, never heard of him. I'm going to play the Blackhawks for that reason and that reason alone. And I just don't really get it. The matchups are, pretty decent, but the offensive metrics are horrendous. So I just don't really know how I'm going to get there. And I feel pretty comfortable fading them at, like I said, fairly high ownership. The top line projected for 14%, the second line projected for 12%. So I think that it's, going to be a lot easier for me to fade them and get over the field in some of these other spots that I like a lot more. How about you?
Yeah, I agree with you here. I'm not really a fan of this ownership that's coming in on the Chicago side of things here. It's been fairly bleak for the Blackhawks for a while now, and there's some fair goal numbers that are coming from the top six. Like, I think that there's some pieces in there that you can mix into your lineups. But at the ownership that they're projecting for right now, I'm just not entirely sold that this is the route to go. I mean, Colorado, obviously they've had some of their own struggles defensively here as of late, but it just feels like one of those games where the matchup is just so overwhelmingly favoring one side. I'm not sure if I'll be able to get to the field here on Chicago at all. 14% ownership coming in on that top line. Second line seeing 11%. Again, I think if you're building a 20 max, you're probably mixing these guys in, but I just don't think that I'd be getting up that high for my own ownership personally. As my camera just continues to want to shut off on me completely randomly. Thankfully, my audio is still working, so that's good there. I think Taylor Hall's a fine play, from Chicago too, but it's not like Jason Dickinson and Nick Foligno are really going out there and like scoring a ton of goals or getting a lot of great looks or anything like that. I mean, they've been pretty tepid offensively for a while now. And for Jason Dickinson to be drawing like 13.7% ownership, that's absurd to me. Like, even Nick Foligno, like 6%, I guess that's okay there. One lineup in a 20 max that you got him in there. But yeah, I just don't really agree with this whatsoever on the Chicago side of things. The Colorado side, I mean, what can you say, right? Like, Colorado won, they're just in a great spot here tonight. Colorado too, I think they're a pretty decent play here tonight on this slate as well. Ross Colton and Casey Middlestat, look like they should be in a position to generate some offense here tonight as well. It's worth noting that they have struggled here as of late to really generate consistent offense. They're scoring well, 2.8 goals per hour, but the expected goal numbers are fairly low. The high danger chances are fairly low. Brock, do you think those numbers are kind of coming up with that Yuri Inola guy coming up to that second line, or do you think that's a little more sticky with Colton and Middlestat?
So this sample is literally just with them, Middlestat and Colton, because I actually don't know for sure if it's Inola that's going to move up the lineup. They didn't provide us with any lines. So to me, I don't mind getting to Colorado 2 tonight, honestly, for that reason, because I don't think there is going to be one specific player that fills that role. I think you're going to see a lot of double shifting, whether it be McKinnon, whether it be Lehkonen, whether it be Rantanen, maybe not a ton of McKinnon because he's a center, but like Rantanen and Lehkonen probably going to see their fair amount of double shifting on that line, and that's going to help Colton and Middlestat. And I think that when you look at the ownership drop off from the top line to the second line, I think that they are in an interesting pivot spot here tonight. the two of them really haven't done a whole lot. As of late, Colton's been very dormant since returning to the lineup. Middlestat's doing basically nothing. So I don't necessarily love them, but on a 3-game slate, I'd rather play them at their ownership than the Blackhawks at their ownership. I'm willing to take a chance. I think part of the reason that I was definitely off of Colorado 2 for a while was like Ross Colton was doing nothing, and he was still priced as if he was playing extremely well like he did early in the season. He was around 6K for a long time, and now he's back down at 5. That still feels a little expensive, but it's at least reasonable, and I think that you'll have no issue getting to them tonight in a decent pivot spot here. Middlestat down to 3,900. He's not doing anything, but at 3,900, he can very easily pay off that salary. I mean, you look at Tyler Bertuzzi, you look at Casey Middlestat, similar price points, similar ownership. And like Bertuzzi, yeah, he's been hot, and Middlestat's been nice, cool. But I honestly still feel like I'd rather play Middlestat just because Bertuzzi's just been so fortunate. I'm not like willing to buy into the obvious regression that's coming there. So, yeah, I'm in on Colorado 2 tonight. I think that they're absolutely fine. And any double shifting of Mikko Rantanen will certainly help the cause.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think that's a reason why I'm comfortable getting this in Colorado 2 here instead of the Chicago side of things for sure. Seems like a decent enough spot. I don't really think there's any reason to get down to these depth lines of Colorado 3 or 4. I mean, again, I guess if you're looking for a real punt off in a 20 max or a 150 max or something like that, I suppose you mix a bit of the player pool a little bit. Joel Kiviranta, interestingly enough, over his last 20 games, 1.4 goals per hour, 1.1 individual expected goals per hour as well. So some okay numbers there, I suppose, from him. 6.8 shots on goal per hour too. At minimum price, if you need a one-off, real cheap punt guy, I don't hate him as an option.
Just back to Colorado 2 here for a quick moment. Ross Colton grades out as the number 3 ranked value option on tonight's slate. So 5K, pretty decent price tag. Middlestat, not too terrible, but it's also worth mentioning Middlestat in their last game against the Panthers. Second on the team in all situations, individual expected goals generated, 4 shot attempts, 2 high danger chances, did have 3 shots on goal and an assist. So maybe showing some signs of life there. And at that price tag in a game environment that looks really, really good, Middlestat could have maybe a little bit of a bounce back performance tonight. As bad as the Avs power play has been, their PK has been awesome. So it's another reason to not have all that much interest in the Blackhawks this evening. Now, I think it's fairly easy to look at those first two games and identify the great plays and the chalk. The entire slate feels like it basically hinges on what happens in this Florida-Utah game. And I mean, obviously it does, because the other 2 games will be over, and then we'll be sitting down watching Utah-Florida and seeing how it all plays out. The Panthers are minus 138 road favorites, 3.2 implied total. The Utah Hockey Club at 2.8. Matchup-wise in this one, pretty bleak on the Utah side of things. And honestly, not that great on the Florida side of things either. So it's going to be interesting. It does grade as the highest event game of the 3 tonight, which is interesting. With the way the Panthers lines are still configured with Barkov, Rodriguez, and Reinhart on the top line, and then you've got Luosterainen, Bennett, Tkachuk, and then you've got, where are they? Verhaeghe, Lundell, and Jesper Boquist on the third line. It does make stacking the Panthers a little bit cheaper, but it also makes it a little more difficult to try to find who the best actual options are. The top line always feels like, with Reinhart and Barkov, always feels like they've got the best ceiling of the bunch, just because they're obviously insanely talented, but they're obviously both very highly productive on the power play as well. That being said, the second line since getting Luosterainen there has been pretty good, and he's just $2,900, just seeing 2.6% ownership tonight. I don't mind him one bit. I think he's one of the better value options on tonight's slate. The metrics for that line are very, very strong. The matchup for that line is better than the Barkov line. They're going to see a lot more of the third line of Utah, which we know is good defensively, but it's maybe a little bit worse than the top line. So I don't mind getting to Florida 2. I don't mind getting to Florida 1. Florida 3, the metrics are terrible, but it feels like Verhaeghe has been productive since, way more productive since being bumped down to that line. I don't know how sustainable it is. They're not generating much, but on a 3-game slate, I'm willing to just take a couple shots on that line. Lindell's talented. Boquist has decent volume, Verhaeghe, $6,700, still on top power play unit. Matchup wise, it's the best of the bunch. They're going to, sorry, wrong side, but best of the top 9 for the Panthers. They're going to see a lot of the second and fourth line of Utah, which the second line is the one you want to face if you're going up against the Utah Hockey Club. So don't mind mixing in some Florida 3 either. Like, it's just going to be, I wish I could look at this Florida lineup and be like, this is the line I absolutely want to play. And I think they each kind of have their own reason to play them. The top line is the highest ceiling. The second line is a lot nicer value than the first line, and then the third line is just kind of play and pray because they're not actually generating that much. How do you feel about the Panther side of things before we move over to Utah?
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, it's kind of a weird spot here. Like, I don't feel great about either one of these lines in the Florida top 6. In a game, it feels like they should be projecting and looking a little bit better than they do. Obviously, Karel Vejmelka in the crease tonight for the Utah Hockey Club, and man, like, he's been just awesome this season for them. 24 games played, 914 save percentage, 17 goals saved above expected on the year. Like, he has been absolutely dynamite for them. So that, gives me a little bit of concern, I think, here about this Florida Panthers side of things. I'll be getting there on both of these lines in the top 6. I think that they're still, in good enough spots here. I do think I lean maybe a little bit more towards that second line with Luosterainen down there. You got to drop an ownership there. They're still in a fairly good spot, grading out as the 6th best line to target on the slate. But you're getting less ownership in what feels like a fairly similar spot as Florida 1. So I don't mind getting there tonight on both of these lines. Florida 3 is kind of interesting. Jesper Boquist has scored at a pretty good clip here over his last 20 games, 1.1 goals per hour of ice time. So I don't hate the idea of kind of going with like a mini stack there of Lundell and Verhaeghe, or even just full stacking this line, which only 5% of the field are doing here tonight. So, I think there's some interesting ways to kind of attack it there. And then obviously you got Maki Samskevich on the 4th line, also playing up on the top power play unit too. So that's kind of an interesting angle or an interesting thing to kind of consider there as well. That being said, the Utah Hockey Club's power play has been penalty kill rather, has been fairly solid, 9th ranked. But Utah does take a shitload of penalties, 3.5 times shorthanded per game. So
yeah, Sam Oskevich, as a one-off play, I don't mind it, or not even as a one-off, but including him to get different on that top power play. Hasn't done a whole heck of a lot, but Vejmelka has struggled a little bit recently. 885 save percentage his last 3 games, but it was just absolutely dazzling prior to that. And then, it's a legitimate question here. Will Florida's offense show up tonight? And honestly, it's concerning, and that's why I think this entire slate hinges on this game, because they played the Arizona Coyotes twice last year and smashed them, and all the usual suspects showed up in those games. The Kachuk had a 3-point game, had a point in the other, or a goal in the other game. Barkov went off, Verhaeghe went off, Reinhart went off. Like, the usual suspects smashed this team last year. They're a different hockey team this year. Don't get me wrong. They're actually a different hockey club this year, but they did their number on them last year. I have hope they can tonight as well. But this is a team that in their last 8 games, they have a 5 and a 4 goal game in there, and they've still only averaged 2 goals per game in their last 8 games. They've also only given up 2.8 goals against, so they've been very low scoring, very low event games. Utah, on the flip side here, has played very well for the last couple of months. I would like to see them continue this run, because I think that they're one of the more exciting teams in the league. When they're humming, the offense has cooled off a little bit though for them as well. Some tough matchups mixed in, no doubt, but 2-1, 2-1, 5 and 2 goals in their last, whatever that is, 6 games. So it's interesting because it's 2 offenses that you feel like should be able to have success that are pretty dormant at the moment. When you look at the Utah Hockey Club, the top line grades out 3rd best at 14,300, seeing a healthy chunk of ownership. Utah 2, with Cooley and Gunther, seeing 11%. 11% for Cooley and 16% for Gunther. They grade out 10th best, but their matchup in this one is the worst on the entire slate. And that is scary, right? Like they also look like a line that you could, similar to Washington 2, pair up reasonably well with a Colorado type stack. Because they're not that expensive, but the matchup here is horrendous. Now, you mentioned pre-show, Utah 3 grades out very well in terms of a matchup score, but overall, even with a great matchup, they only grade out 20th best. The 5v5 metrics are pretty bad. Like, it's just very difficult to figure out the avenue in which to target this game. And that's why the entire slate hinges on it, because somebody's going to get it right, but it's very hard to identify where it's going to come from because it's very wishy-washy with the way these two offenses have played, with the way these matchups look. To me, I think that my plan for the most part is to play the expensive guys that I know are in good spots tonight and just take my chances on some of the different value options that I feel really strongly about. Those guys being the Luosterainens at $2,900 and 2.6% ownership. Maybe even Jack McBain at $2,600, 4% ownership. Trying to find those good value options that aren't seeing much ownership, hoping they're the ones that pop a goal or two and then really push my lineup over the top, because there's not a whole lot of certainty on this slate other than maybe Colorado 1, and trying to find the right piece to put together is the way to win tonight. What are you doing with Utah tonight?
Yeah, you kind of hit the nail on the head here. Like it's a pretty ugly slate, all things considering here.
Awful.
It's really hard to identify these spots, it feels like, tonight. I mean, I've got interest in the top 6 for Utah, but these matchup scores are just so terrible. The Panthers haven't been great lately, as mentioned. They're still playing fairly good defensively, but it almost feels like it's like you look at all 3 of these games beyond Colorado having the potential to blow out Chicago here, and it feels like they could just be low scoring games, like, 2-1, 3-2 sort of games. And that's going to make it really difficult here. So, I think just trying to identify people who, are going to give you some solid floors and have some options for some bonuses. I think, you take a look in the top 6. Clayton Keller, obviously, he's been shooting the puck at a good clip here as of late, 9 shots on goal per hour, continuing to be productive with 3.9 points per hour, scoring at a great clip, the highest of anybody here in this game. And then you look at the second line, Logan Cooley and Dylan Guenther. Guenther is still scoring at a great clip, 1.7 goals per hour over his last 20, 3.7 points per hour. Still shooting the puck at a good clip, 9.1 shots on goal per hour. Logan Cooley, he's dropped off a little bit in terms of the shots department, but again, 3.7 points per hour. So he's finding ways to continue to be productive. I think I lean a little bit more towards this second line than the first line on this Utah side of things. The ownership numbers are fairly similar, but you're getting maybe a little bit more value with full stacking. If you include Jack McBain in there, Utah 1 coming in at 14,300 a full stack, Utah 2 coming in at $12,800. I don't know, man. It just kind of feels like you're throwing darts for the most part on this slate here. Utah 3 is kind of interesting. They grade out with the best matchup score in this game as a whole. And in each of the last 2 games for the hockey club, Utah 3 scored a couple of goals. Lawson Krause had 2 goals against the Calgary Flames a couple of days ago. He had an assist against the Dallas Stars as well. Nick Bukestad, the center on that line, assists in back-to-back games there as well. So, 5 shots on goal against the Dallas Stars for Bukestad too. So, can the Edmonton Oilers legend continue? Who knows? I'm always going to find ways to tie it back to the Edmonton Oilers. You guys know me by this point. But I've kind of got a little bit of interest here and thrown a dart on Utah 3 and seen if they, can remain hot here. So, obviously, Spicy Tuna there on that other wing there too. Wouldn't really expect a whole lot from him, but it's kind of an interesting dart throw, I suppose. And it feels like that's, again, what we're trying to look for here on this slate.
I mean, how much better would you feel about that line if Matias Maccelli was still there? Like, they're just burying him. And at 3K, with Bukestad, Krause, their underlying metrics actually aren't that bad. And honestly, if I'm going to build a Utah 3 lineup tonight, it is not going to include Liam Spicy Tuna O'Brien it's going to include Michelli, and just hopefully midway through the game, they realize this is ridiculous, and they move Michelli back up there, and things start to look a little bit better again and get back to normal. I mean, that trio has been pretty solid together for a couple of years now. But yeah, Michelli really not having a great year, and he's kind of paying the price tonight, or at least in recent games. Okay, we don't do this a whole lot, but it feels necessary given the slate tonight. We don't usually pull up the value forwards all that frequently, but like we said, throwing a lot of darts tonight. Ross Colton, 5K. We'll talk about just guys under 5K. Nick Schmaltz at $4,400 grades out really well. We talked about Taylor Hall already. Craig Smith drawing 9% ownership on Chicago 4. You know, he's just a guy that shoots the puck a lot. He doesn't see a ton of ice time, right? He's going to be around 10 minutes, but he's hit the shot bonus 3 times in his last 8 games. So he's somebody that's going to shoot the puck a ton at minimum price night. And if you're looking for a dart throw, if he just gets 5 shots on goal and hits the bonus, I mean, you're going to be thrilled with that. So seeing a decent chunk of ownership, but he always grades out pretty well because he's got very nice shot volume. Talked about Middlestat a little bit already. Lindell, 4,200. Foligno, Dowd, Mikheyev all have decent volume. Kiefer Sherwood is kind of interesting too at $3,200. Then you got Bertuzzi, who we've mentioned at 3,500. You know, are anybody here that we haven't really talked a lot about that you are interested in?
Not really. I mean,
this slate sucks so bad.
It does. It's really a pretty shitty slate here. So I mean, we're sitting here talking about Craig Smith at $2,500 and hoping he can take 5 shots for the bonus. It's like, my God, maybe this is just one we should all take off. But you know, there's a couple of other Chicago guys that are popping up there too, like Taylor Hall. You know, his name is there. You know, looking a little further down, Nick Foligno, Ilya Mikheyev. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I just don't feel great about playing the Chicago side of things. You know, the one thing that I think is kind of interesting to mention here, in the last 7 games that Peter Mrazek has played against Colorado since joining the Chicago Blackhawks, so back in 2022-23, he's got a 3-4 record against Colorado with a .350 goals against average and an .897 save percentage. He's got a couple of wins here against Colorado. You know, and these are some games where, like last year, it was a 5-2 win for the Chicago Blackhawks. He only gave up 2 goals on 26 shots against. In each of the 3 wins that he has, he's only given up 2 goals. So I suppose it is maybe in the world of possibilities here that the Chicago Blackhawks find a way to have some success tonight. And Peter Mrazek, but like, I don't know, man. It just feels really weird. It feels like a really, really weird slate. And
I mean, if he somehow pulls it off, it would be just the ultimate leverage play. Just to play devil's advocate to the numbers you just threw out, Peter Mrazek's last 7 outings, he's 0-6 with an .834 save percentage. So
it's bad. He's not been good.
He's been horrendous. So just the opposite end of the spectrum.
Totally.
Okay, let's get to the goalies. You know what? Good on you for mentioning Peter Mrazek in a positive light for at least 30 seconds. Because, I mean, he was playing fairly well at the start of the season, and boy, things have just fallen apart. Okay, Devon Taves has really started to find his mojo as of late. Struggled at the start of the season. He's been great lately. $4,200 is a really nice price tag there. I'm going to continue to tout Gustav Forsling as much as I possibly can. It remains a great play. It is worth mentioning, we didn't talk about it earlier, but it does look like Aaron Ekblad and Nico Mikkola will both be back for the Panthers tonight. They're both officially game time decisions, but looking like they're going to be back. I love how we have 1,000 people watching live right now, just us bitching about how bad this slate is. Josh Manson, if you can't quite afford Devon Taves, is a really nice option at $3K. Not seeing a whole lot of ownership tonight. He's been really good. Your guy, Ian Cole, $3,300 is a shot blocking machine against the Panthers. He should see a reasonable amount. Whenever you got Ian Cole in the highest event game of the night, usually good things happen. Ole Mata, similar player profile there to Ian Cole. Kesselring got a little bit more offense, a little bit less shot blocking, but reasonable price tag there. Wyatt Kaiser's been really good lately as well. Don't mind him one bit. If you need some capitals defenseman, I think Sandin, Van Riemsdyk, Matt Roy all look okay. Sandin would be my preference, specifically with Washington too. Obviously correlates nicely with them on the second power play unit. not the best correlation ever, right? Not going to expect the second power play unit to go out there and dominate, but at $3,400, he does see a healthy amount of ice time with them both at 5v5 and on the second power play unit. So just 5% ownership. Hasn't done a whole lot lately, but on a 3-game slate, I mean, we talked about Craig Smith. I'm going to talk about Rasmus Sandin. Who do you like on the blue line tonight?
Well, thanks for leaving me Sam Malinsky to talk about. I appreciate
There you go.
$2,600. I mean, you want to talk about a volume god. 6.1 shots on goal per hour, 6.8 block shots per hour over his last 20 games. He doesn't see a ton of ice time, but god damn does he know how to do productive things out there for DFS purposes. So I don't mind him whatsoever. You know, Jacob Chikrin looks like he's in a good spot at $5,600 here tonight as well. Josh Manson, I like him at 3K. Oli Mata might be one of my favorite defensive plays on the slate here at 3K. The guy is just eating pucks left, right, and center, and seemingly out of nowhere because he was never really known as a big shot block guy. But as of late here in Utah, he is absolutely eating pills. Wyatt Kaiser, as you mentioned, $2,700. I like him. I don't mind getting down and really dumpster diving on the blue line here tonight. Like, I think this is the kind of slate where you could kind of comfortably do that, looking at some of these stars and scrubs builds. And I mean, even when you just look at the pricing in general on the slate, it's fairly soft on the blue line. There's not a lot of really expensive guys. Obviously, you got your Cale Makar up there at 9K, Quinn Hughes at $7,800. I think Hughes is a fairly good play here tonight too. So, the shot block gods, Ian Cole, Oli Mata, Alex Vlasic at $4,500. Probably not going to get there for me. Probably need that salary to go other ways.
Yeah, maybe it's just a night to eat chalk and then just play like the 0% owned defenseman and hope you get a puck to bounce your way. Noel Juleson, my hat trick pick for tonight. Sam Malinsky was my dog when Josh Manson was hurt, but since Manson's been back, just 12.5 minutes per game, only 3 shots on goal in 5 games during that stretch. So the ice time has dipped considerably, and that's basically when I pivoted off Sam Malinsky over to Josh Manson. But again, the price tag is there. You just need one to go your way tonight. And that's going to be the difference. Okay, between the pipes, Trent Miner, his NHL debut grades as the best goalie to target tonight at $8,400. I actually don't mind him at all. The volume is certainly not going to be great, I don't imagine, but highest implied win percentage on the slate. Very expensive, but pretty good matchup. Logan Thompson, probably my favorite goalie on the slate. He's also the highest owned, but $7,800. He's been great. I like the matchup with the Canucks. That being said, I like the matchup against the Canucks the other night too with Sam Montembeault. Did not go great for me, so buyer beware. Karel Vejmelka, if the Panthers offense continues to struggle at $7,400, going to see a lot of volume tonight. Don't mind him at all in GPPs. Probably won't get to a ton of Langdon. Mrazek is horrifying. Bobrovsky feels pretty good at 8K. So I'll probably be sticking with those top 4 with Logan Thompson probably garnering the majority of my ownership. Before I get to you, Zach, Javier just got here. He said, late to the show, but is everyone playing Colorado 1?
Yes.
Literally everybody.
Yeah,
if you don't play, you're the only one. Yeah. Peter Mrazek is playing the Avs tonight.
Yes.
Who do you like between the pipes besides Peter Mrazek?
And Thompson, I think he's probably my favorite goaltending play on the slate here tonight. I think then for me, it's probably Bobrovsky and Vejmelka. I lean a little bit more towards Vejmelka here in this spot. His numbers have just been so great so far this season. Don't mind getting to some Trent Miner too at $8,400 is kind of crazy to see that there. But yeah, I don't mind it. I think it's a fair play here on this slate. The shot volume is the one concern I think that I have there with playing Trent Miner. But you know what? Just kind of build your lineups and pick the goaltender who correlates best with the guys that you got. So that's kind of the way that I'm looking at this one.
Just embrace the weird tonight. That's the only way to do it. Peter Parker says, if you were to play a Florida line, which line would it be? I mean, in a perfect world, probably Florida 1. I love Barkov, Reinhart mini stacks, but being salary conscious, I would probably go with Florida 2. I'll go Florida 2, being a little bit salary conscious.
I'll go with Florida 4 just to get super weird tonight.
I don't like Florida 4, but I actually like Florida 3 quite a bit. I think Florida 3 is in a really interesting spot at low ownership. Okay, before we get to today's daily face-off, our head-to-head lineup challenge, we got the hat trick pick challenge. Someone's scoring a hat trick tonight just because this slate is so dog shit that something crazy is going to happen. And it's probably going to be Nathan McKinnon, but who cares? Okay. If you want to participate in today's Hat Trick Pick Challenge, comment your Hat Trick pick in the comment section of the video on YouTube, not the live chat. If your player scores a hat trick tonight, we will get you a $25 gift card to nationgear.ca. You can pick up some DFO swag. Also, if the Avs win tonight, Mikko Rantanen is almost certainly going to score an empty net goal. It's all he does. He has 7 empty net goals in the season. The NHL record in a season is 9. He's only halfway through the season. He's already got 7. 29.2% of Mikko Rantanen's goals this season have come on the empty net. Just absolutely bonkers shit. So, if you're feeling like maybe Colorado 1 didn't quite get there for you tonight, just wait till the empty net. Okay, let's get to today's daily face-off. Zach, you won yesterday's head-to-head battle, bringing the record to 25-26 on the season. Look at that. We both have Colorado 1. Shocker. Who else did you pair with them?
Big shocker there. I kind of got a little bit weird here. I went with a little bit of a Colorado onslaught. So you got McKinnon and Rantanen, you got Ross Colton and Casey Middlestat there. As you mentioned, hoping that Rantanen can kind of slide in, play some time on Colorado too there with those guys. Logan Thompson in the crease. I like him. Gustav Forsling. I forgot that Aaron Ekblad was returning tonight. So whatever. Who knows? Maybe he finds a way to get productive here.
He's still productive with Ekblad in the lineup.
Totally. And Michael Kesselring, $2,900. I wanted Oli Mata, but I didn't have the extra $100 to get to him there because I one-offed Pierre-Luc Dubois and Jonathan Lekermacki. I'm trying to kind of go with a spread it out approach here and hope somebody grabs on somewhere and just praying that everything I make tonight somehow gets across the cash line because I think that's all we can really do here tonight.
Just hope not to lose tonight. Don't care if we win, just don't lose. Okay, I went with the mini stack of McKinnon and Rantanen. I also included Josh Manson. I got Logan Thompson between the pipes and a full Washington 2 stack, and then just went with my two of my favorite value plays in the Utah-Florida game because I couldn't really find any other way to target that game. So I went with Luostarinen and Ian Cole. Cole should hit the shot bonus tonight. And then, as I mentioned, Logan Thompson between the pipes. Max is asking who won. Oh, you answered him already. He took last night's head-to-head. And with that, he also gets to go first in today's Hat Trick Pick Challenge. The low-hanging fruit is there for you, bud.
Absolutely, and that's why I'm taking Alex Ovechkin for the hat trick tonight.
I knew it.
You took it from me the other day. I wanted him, so going with him tonight, leaving anybody from Colorado for you and anybody else in the chat.
I should go with Tom Wilson. I'm going to go with Mikko Rantanen. He's going to have 2, and then he's going to find the empty net for number 3. Give me Mikko Rantanen. Mikko Rantanen anytime goal tonight is anytime empty net goal tonight is probably minus 240. Tonight's slogan: hope you end up with as much money as you started with. That's amazing. Yeah,
literally.
Absolutely love that. Anyways, with that, that's going to do it for today's riveting edition of the DFO DFS report. Hopefully we have much more fun. It really is unfortunate because I don't think it was like that horrible of a slate with Calgary and LA. Like that would have given us like 6 additional lines to talk about. Calgary presents really nice value options, even though they were in a horrible matchup tonight. The Kings have been awesome. They've actually shifted the way they do things. They've used to just hard match the Deneau line against the options best. Now they're hard matching the Byfield line, which really changes things up, gives Deneau better matchups. The Byfield line's been unbelievable. Kopitar is unreal. Kempe is great. Like that game would have added a lot more juice to this slate, and then you take it out and the slate just died. Like it was horrible. Why not post the scores from the previous night's head-to-head so we know how well you guys did? That is a terrific question, and it is something we do plan on doing, but we're waiting for just more sophisticated graphics that are supposed to be coming our way soon. We are not the graphic guys, so we're doing the best of what we can. Half the time, I literally build my lineup while we're doing the show. It's a bit of a stretch, but yeah, we do plan on doing that moving forward. So yeah, that's going to do it. Thanks to our friends at rotogrinders.com for providing projected ownership for today's show. If you want $20 off your first month of RotoGrinder NHL Premium, you can do so by clicking the link in the description of the video on YouTube. Build everything or take everything you learned in today's show, throw it in their optimizer, and build the optimal lineup tonight. And if you want to join the DFO DFS Discord, you can do so by clicking the link in the description of the video on YouTube. We will be talking about this riveting slate for the next 2 hours before our lock, and then we will obviously drop in any of the late breaking warm-up news, any different lines that come out during warm-ups. We'll make sure you got them and you know who's in and who's out. So Max says Flames and Kings postponed. Yes, don't play any Flames and Kings tonight. Although, like, maybe I should play Darcy Kemper because I've been getting negatives with my goalies as of late. So maybe I should just lock in the 0. I guess I don't even have to pay up for Darcy Kemper. I can go down to like Dan Vladar and just lock in a 0 as opposed to a minus 3.5, which is I think what I got from Jordan Binnington yesterday. So
hey, you know what? Eric Portillo at $6,500 is technically on the slate there. So it's one way to go.
It's live. Hey, embrace the weird. I'm building an Eric Portillo lineup tonight for sure. 100%. He's a better play than Peter Mrazek.
He might be.
All right. Here we go. That's going to do it. See you back here tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. Eastern. Tonight's slogan, hope you end up with as much money as you started with. Until tomorrow, cheers.
Cheers.